was it like returning to the company in this capacity?
Well, first of all, you had a lot of really scared people because they had no idea. Some of the people, the older people, knew that I had a significant background in sports, but many of them either knew me by seeing me in the building doing Saturday Night Live, or that's all they knew because I'd been out of sports since 1974, so it was exactly 15 years.
Well, this was the other part of the question I was going to ask,
Yeah.
which was, how had the Olympics, the business of the Olympics, the coverage of the Olympics changed since you'd left?
Okay, but this all comes full circle because I decided the very first full day I'm here to have everybody summoned to meet me in one place. And I sat on a stool at home base in Studio 8H, where Saturday Night Live was done, mere feet away from 8G, where much of sports studio work and stuff was done. And it was a midweek day, it was probably a Wednesday, and they all came down. I addressed them, probably for 10 or 15 minutes. I don't remember most of it, but a lot of it was talking about how important the room that I was in was to me personally, that not only had I first come to NBC to do a show in that studio, but so much of my life, my wife, my children, all had emerged from this place, but that they should not lose sight of one thing. My whole career had begun in sports. My passion in sports had never gone away. The first part of the newspaper I always turned to was sports. And I was very, very much aware of what all of them did and who did what. And I did not do that in a threatening manner, but I did say that I did have great respect for much of what they did in terms of live sports television, but I really did not feel that they'd had an effective teaching of what storytelling was, and that would be the big thing, particularly since the biggest single thing that NBC had, because one of the other reasons I got this job is that NBC, after 40 years with baseball, it just lost it in December. Now, by the way, it was brilliant that they lost it because CBS had overbid by so much money that they were to lose $600 million in the next 2 years. And that wasn't a guess, it had to be publicly disclosed. So I made it clear in the room that there would be change, but that the vast majority of change, at least initially, was going to be bringing people in who would really teach them how to shape shows, because in Olympics, particularly from Europe, most of it was going to be post-produced. So that was the opportunity really to enrich it with more profiles and stuff like that. And they had tried to do the vast majority of Korea live without putting so much of the stuff in context. So it started off that way, and I made a point, and I still do it today. My management style is largely based, at least in terms of the people that work here. And now we're split in two places, because I'd say about a quarter of the people who work for me are based at an Olympic facility up in Stamford, Connecticut, which enabled us to get rid of a floor in this very expensive building several years ago. But the ones who are here, they see me every day, because at least twice a day I walk out of my office, sometimes as many as 3, and I make a full circle of this office, not the main hallways, but back in the little hallways. Everybody sees me if they have anything they want to say or grab me. And I would say in the vast majority of offices, there isn't a time over the course of 2 or 3 days that I don't stick my head in their door and look to engage them in what's going on. So that was me from the very beginning. So other than the fact that I think they were shocked, because it was the first time that NBC Sports had, Don Ohlmeyer had been the executive producer, and he had run a lot of the production operation. He'd been gone about 4 years at this point, but he'd run it in much the same way that I would run it. But the head guy had never been the boss, had never been somebody with an extensive production background. And in sports, I did have an extensive production background. So I was going to be a part of everything, and they'd find out that I knew enough. My big footing would be done usually in quiet rooms, and if I was unhappy with how a live show was going, I would never call the truck. I would call the broadcast center in New York and tell an AD who worked for me in the shortest terms possible what I wanted the AD in the truck on the road to be told. And the ADs knew, wait for a lull. Don't have this thing in a truck where Ebersol says do this now, because that'll throw a whole truck in it, but to try to get it in. So I would say that there wasn't a cataclysmic thing here. I made some shifts. I mean, I moved out the then executive producer to bring in the person who was going to teach and so on. But that executive producer and I worked it all out, and 10 years later I brought him back as a major consultant to us on various things, because he had a lot of strengths in areas that we could use. So, everything then was really, we were in pro football. We were very light in the winter and the spring, and I worked very hard, and within about, 6 months, I'd made a deal to take the NBA, which had been on CBS for, I guess, about 15 years, and brought it over here. And for 12 years, that probably, other than the Olympics, was our most important autograph. The NBA on NBC. People still boogaloo whenever they think they hear that music.